Hey guys, Dave here from Nerdarchy, 4 Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with the full crew today.
Right.
Nate.
I'm Ted.
Now we've sorted out who everyone is. We're doing a video response about power gaming to WoodWWad, the main man, the originator and godfather of In the Ring of Fire RPG. So basically, you know,
he plays Johnny Cash and
he poo-poos power gaming and says it's the worst thing that ever happens to the hobby. He's very immersion style gamer. And, you know, people have argued, well, you know, power gamers add more gamers to the hobby, and growing the hobby is a good thing.
All right, now this, you know, my first question is, like, what is defined as a power gamer?
I'm glad you asked.
And
I'm glad you asked.
I'm just going to say that one of the main problems I saw with several people in talking about power gaming is we don't have a clear definition. Power gaming just seems to be, from people's complaints, stacked on to any annoying kind of problem character type that we see. Like, oh, well, he just likes to kill things all the time, and he min-maxes his character. All right, so he's a power gamer. Well, really, he likes hack and slash.
Right.
The problem is that he will fight anything and everything, and he just also happens to be focused completely on that from his character perspective. So if we had we don't have like a clear-cut, everybody agrees that this is what a power gamer is. It's just kind of like added on to the things that annoy us about a character, like a rules lawyer power gamer.
My working
the same thing.
My working definition is like being multi-classed and things. But anyway, like my working definition of a power game is the person that puts the emphasis on the G part of the RPG hobby above and over and above anything else that's going to happen at the game table. So it is really about the number crunching of it all. Like how can I get the greatest statistical advantage out of it?
They seek to maximize the mechanics of the system.
Because when, you know, in his video, you know, he talks about, like, okay, you know, when I create a character, you know, I care about the theme. I'm not really caring about the mechanics of it. And I feel that a lot of people, when they talk about power gaming, they have a problem with people who make optimized or well-built characters. It's like, oh, you know,
oh my God,
you know, you're gonna play this elven rogue, or you're gonna play, you know, the half-elven sorcerer. You know, even if you're talking about things that are, you know, trite or trope or whatever the word is, like they have a problem with that. And I'm someone, I actually like looking for things that work and mesh together, so that while I'm building it, I'm as optimized as I can be, you know, for my time away from the table. When I'm at the table, I'm just playing a character. Do I consider myself a power gamer by you know, the definitions that other people have put out there? Well, because I care about how my character is built, that technically falls into that, but I don't care more about the build than the story. So
I would never make a character that's like, I've made some suboptimal build, but I wouldn't go like suboptimal built characters where like this character is terrible at this. Why the F is he even adventuring? Like he's like the worst. Because even like Bilbo Baggins like was an unlikely hero, but he was actually, you know, when push came to shove, like competent at being a roguish type of character.
Right.
Like he successfully sneaked through things.
Correct.
So that means he had a high dex stat, even though he was an unlikely hero.
He was not confident in what he did, but he was
competent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, I'm never gonna say, well, let's play a mage with a 10 intelligence, or let's play a rogue with a 8 dex. I mean, those things. No, I'm not gonna go there. You know, but you know, when you make your character because you've got an idea, you've got a theme that's gonna work. I made a Warforged sorcerer. Those two things don't seem to go well together. You know, there's nothing to charisma. I got nothing that really builds off of the sorcerer. He was a lot of fun to play, you know, and I don't need, you know, the crunch to make him better. But I cared about the build and I cared about the game.
So getting to the say that you make a character with a 10 intelligence or even an 8 intelligence who wants to be a wizard. He's like a half-orc fighter. he wants to be a wizard. He tries. He just doesn't get it. So he just beats things. But like maybe like whole impromptu, like he has a giant spell book that he's beating somebody to death with or something like that.
Throws it at people occasionally.
Yeah, and he just yells magic missiles. Right?
As he throws his hammers.
So like he's aspirationally he wants to be a wizard, but game wise it'll never happen. And like you just keep playing it. That he keeps missing at being a wizard because
Character builds aside, right?
Yeah.
The idea is that the power gamer ruins the game experience at the table. For the DM and the other players, they break everything. Now, one of the things that I thought was kind of funny that Nelson from Infinite Roleplay pointed out was you're mad because they know the rules better than you, and you're playing the game, you should know the rules, right? So essentially, they're maximizing the rules, right? Mm-hmm. Well, and aside for that, though, like the whole concept that this person is going to break the game, because we've all had that person at the table that plays that way, and you can deal with it in different ways. I've never had a particular problem. I just adjust things, but you can get a disruptive player from any group. An immersive role player can be the worst person at your freaking table. Hello, do you want someone else to role play and play the game? No, because this guy is doing his thespian thing, and he won't let anybody else get a word in edgewise because he's too busy acting. He's in character.
Well, so also too, so he was talking about how he doesn't want to expand the hobby for the power gamer type of player or whatever. But you know what? It's fine because it's like the iteration of the game, the aspect of the game that you like, it's like your religion, right? So if you're a Catholic, you're going to want to bring people into the Catholic Church. If you're a Muslim, you want to make people Muslim, and if you're Hebrew, you're one of the chosen people and whatever. But no, so in all seriousness, it's like you always want to expand your religion, and that's fine. So preach to the other thespian players. If you're a power gamer, you can preach to them. And the hobby still grows.
That's the other point I was going to go. You don't play with people that aren't compatible at your table anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, so the hobby's still going to grow because if we have all these different people, like there weren't YouTube channels a decade ago or when D&D was first around, right? So the hobby has so much more of a chance now to proliferate, and everybody can preach the iteration of it that they want. And maybe people that were solidly power gamers, they'll get exposed to some of the more immersive people and take note of that. And this is a fun part of the hobby too that I've been missing out on,
right?
Because I'm too stuck in on the numbers part. And also too, that's where a lot of people come into the game, with the power gaming. I want to have the best sword. I want the best armor. I want magic missile. I
want to do the most damage around.
A lot of people come into the hobby as kids, teenagers, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or just playing and I can do all this awesome shit. Great. And then a few years later, you get more and more into the RP part of it sometimes. So
when I was listening to this video, one of the things I thought of that you just brought up was how old were you when you started playing RPGs? I was a kid. So
how mature could you have possibly been at that point?
Yeah, you're not worried about that. You're going to get the treasure and kill the monster.
Yeah.
Maybe not in that order.
Yeah.
But, that's what the game starts out as. And, I feel like most gamers go through that, unless you come into the hobby later in life or you actually, start with a group that's much more experienced than you are. But even still, you're still not that mature. We're playing in Ted's game, and we played a couple other games with my son who's 13 and 14 at the time. So what level of role playing are you going to expect from that kid? Should he just get out of the hobby?
Or not start.
Yeah. Go away, kid. You're doing
Dave,
it wrong.
Sorry, Dave. Your son's not welcome because he's not willing to talk in front of everybody.
First off, he put his highest stat in wisdom, and he's a druid, and that's just unacceptable.
Yeah. That's totally min-maxing.
Min-maxing. Yeah. So
as Ryan was saying, preach to the part of the hobby that appeals to you. We as Nerdarchy are here to promote the hobby, promote nerd culture, promote being nerdy. We say at the end of every video, stay nerdy. So that's what we're looking for. So if somebody wants to be a power gamer, find other power gamers to play with, and don't bash the other aspects, because you never know when somebody who's a power gamer now is going to move away from that, later on.
Yeah, they'll evolve, like anybody does. Or it's the same thing most people when they start out playing a D&D or whatever, it's usually they start playing a very like European sort of fantasy, like knights in armor and damsels in distress and all that. Like, you know, like there's cool other campaign settings. There's other cultures to explore that aren't like white Anglo-Saxons. And like, you know, like most people will explore some of that other stuff too. So
I see, you know, this game, like all the different types of ways you can play it is like being a dimmer switch, right? And I feel like most normal people kind of like, you know, there's different gradients. It's not black and white. It's not like all power gaming, all immersive role playing, you know, all tactician. Like there's all these different types that mix together in every single player, and at different points they're just going to come out more than others.
I agree.
Yeah, I would like to go on a little rant for a little bit.
yeah, all right.
My little rant is about the idea that we're playing a game, and the game and statistics and you know, the damage and everything and hit points, they're all kind of like describing the physics of the world. So if you're you want to portray an excellent fighter, or a fighter that does massive amounts of damage every turn, or can just really dish it out, well, you would have to, if you want to properly portray that, you're going to have to max that character out, because otherwise he's not actually going to be as good as another fighter that does that. So if you're trying to portray that, you know, quintessential excellent fighter of excellence, you've got to have that, because you can't, you know, as I kind of say, like the opposite side of the power gaming thing, where you go the other way on purpose, and you make this kind of like supposedly well-rounded person that kind of fights and it goes on adventures. I don't know why they're there. It's like the Tolkien-esque kind of feel like, why the hell are you here? You should be going to making like pies somewhere, not on this adventure, which is like how I feel about some of those characters. But there's these different levels of fighter, and if you're going to be that like top of the line excellence, use the rules to make it show.
Like you can't make
you can't act your way towards that level of damage.
You can't portray a character who's a master swordsman if you don't make his stats reflect that master.
Yeah, if you get disarmed by every schmo that comes up to you, what kind of master swordsman are you?
Yeah.
You can act all you want about it, but the sword's on the ground.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I mean, unless you play a character that has the bravado of a master swordsman who is terrible, that'd be a hilarious, a great comic.
Maybe a little more
character.
swash in there, yeah. But so that's my main issue with is like, well, I think like optimism. That's another thing with the power game thing. It's the game rules to the exclusion of everything else. So like the camaraderie, the social aspects, the immersiveness, and everything else, you're throwing that aside and saying, this is what I really want to focus on, the gamist kind of rolling dice and adding stuff up. I was like, well,
like the Rain Man of our RPGs.
That's
counting numbers.
I feel like that's how a lot of us start. We learn the rules, and you can latch on to learning the rules. It takes years and years to get good at being in front of people and talking
and being someone else
and being somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, people go to school for that.
Yeah, well, it can be hard being in front of other people talking and being yourself, let alone trying to be somebody else.
Being somebody else.
And,
so my continued rant is that, you know, if you're going to do the opposite, it's like, well, what's your drive and motivation when you roll up a character or you build a character? You say, he's got to suck at some things. You know, like, do you just like do the opposite power game and you say, all right, he's mediocre at this and he's okay at this and his swordsmanship's not so bad and I'm going to play him like this. Like, all right, so you just make an average person. Well, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you're going for a particular goal as a person and you choose to excel at that mediocrity. Well, that's fine, but you don't get all nasty with the people that make the success and kill all the monsters, because you're not at their level because of your choices.
Right.
And you can shine in other places if you chose to take charisma-based things and have a higher charisma. You might actually make something out of it. But, you know, you're just going to fail, I think, at a lot of roles because you're ignoring the game
the fact
theory.
that we are playing a game.
Yeah, that it's not just a whole bunch. I mean, play like Vampire the Masquerade with no dice if you want to just do immersive role playing. I guess. I mean, I haven't seen that in a long time, but, you know, a decade or so ago, that's what I thought it was. So, but, you know, it's D&D. It's a bit different. You roll dice. There's statistics. And the statistics mean something in the game.
Well, yeah, you may as well just go into the game systems that are diceless. Yeah. Like there are things that they're straight up like play games without stats. If immersion is your only end goal to the thing, like just play games. Yeah, solidly play games that don't even use stat mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not saying, hey, leave, get out of our hobby, because I like, immersive role players.
Add to the hobby.
Add a lot to the hobby. Just like people who can get the job done and kill monsters, add to the hobby. Like sometimes you just need that guy that is a sword with an arm attached to it. I mean, and try and draw that guy out. Try and make him less power gamey. If he's just there to roll
make your
dice,
character antagonize him and see what happens.
Perhaps not that.
Here's the thing: there's plenty of novels with characterizations of characters that are awesome at stuff, and they still have depth. Like, basically, part of this argument too is that if you're a power gamer, you can't make a character with any depth, which is totally ridiculous. I mean, Nelson from Infinity Roleplay is like one of the strongest power gamers I've ever seen, but he puts a lot into his RP.
Absolutely.
So so it's not, one is not exclusive to the other. And guess what? You can actually power game immersive role playing, because what is power gaming by the definition that you just said? It's the one thing to the exclusion of all other things, and to the detriment of those other things as well as the people at the table. Well, you can do that with any aspect of this game.
Yeah.
Pick one.
It's a back and forth
So
flow
the,
thing.
the other aspect of the video talked about how power gamers are destroying the hobby, and you touched on it, like that. Oh well, they know the rules better than the DM. Well, if that's the case, the DM needs to study up, because as the DM, if you don't know what the players are capable of, you're not doing your homework.
Or screw that. Give that guy a co-DM role. Be like, yo, what's the rule again? And use that resource at your table.
And additionally, beyond all of that, I don't know how everybody else out there decides to run their games. But in the early days, the iteration of this this group, it really, as we said in other videos, there was a battle line drawn. It was you versus us, or Steve versus us, and we really had to fight tooth and nail for our lives, and sometimes we lost. Campaigns ended because everybody died.
TPK.
But as we evolved throughout the hobby, we understood that it became more of a mutual storytelling between the DM and the players, and that's where we've all been comfortable for a long time. And if your players are caring about the hack and slash and are enjoying themselves at the table, and you as the DM are weaving this story together with the players, you don't need to worry about if they're tromping through your monsters. Okay, let's get back to the combat. Let's get back to the role playing, and then we'll have more combat later. It's not a big deal. If they are beating through the combat in a round or two, and then they're gonna have to spend the next hour sitting there on their faces while the rest of the table role plays. Okay, well, whatever.
And there's different scenarios you can create to deal with power gamers anyway, because if they excel at like a few things, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that they're not that good at.
There's some stuff they've got on the table.
They've got, like the guy that excels at combat. Well, if he has a personality, or maybe he doesn't like talking to people, or in this case, let's say he's a power gamer that doesn't role play that much, well then he's going to miss out when you have role-playing sections that are like big deal role-playing sections, or persuasion, or like dealing with people that you've got to give and take with in a sit-down manner rather than hacking heads off. And again, I think like when you brought up the rules thing, like people getting like, oh, the guy knows more rules than me and he's like getting on me about stuff. Well, that's a rules lawyer that also power games. Like that's what I'm saying. Like there's power gaming, and then there's all the annoying types of like personalities that aggravate DMs and aggravate other players, like spotlight cogs. The person that takes over 80% of the session with talking and with what he wants to do is going to be a problem. If he also just maxed his character to be super persuasive and talk with everybody, well, he maximized it towards what he wants to do with most of the game, but he's also...
He power games charisma.
Yeah, he's power games charisma. But he's also taking over the game. So he's a problem for a completely different reason than just power gaming for a social character.
So somebody can take a character sheet, optimize their character, plan out exactly what they're going to do with all of their levels, thus fall into the power gamer. They can know the rules better than you, and exploit the DM, so therefore they can fall into
But
a
their
rules
weakness
lawyer.
is being able to talk to girls.
But when they actually show up at the table and actually play and get into an RP situation, they can steal the spotlight. So it's technically possible to do all of these in every situation, as just one person. And it happens.
So here's a general rule of thumb, right? No matter what kind of player, what kind of gamer you are, just don't be an asshole. that pretty much solves most of the life's problems.
Remember that you're playing a game with other people, and that they might actually like to also play the game.
Yeah. So be considerate of the other people at the table, including the GM, and you should be fine.
Yep.
That works for me. What Ted said. You guys, what do you think in the comments below? Like, share, subscribe. You know the drill.
You can check us out over on Nerdarchy, the store, either on our YouTube page here or on our webpage.
You can join the conversation over on Reddit.
Or you can support us on Patreon.
Till next time.
Stay nerdy.